From the leaves of the past. This is a true story of a man from a village on the outskirts of a sea city who was mentally paralyzed during the rampage of black knowledge and spent the rest of his life in apathy and unconsciousness. This is a true story. Elders of the old times, whenever they mention knowledge, they always refer to this person. With apologies, I will keep here some information about this past yesterday. This is the story of 1979. 27-year-old Aslam was a handsome young man from the village. He was the sole heir of his parents. Reddish fair white color and full body was enviable. His height of about 6 feet gave him the most distinct and unique charm. Her silky light brown and long hair hung down to her ears. The cheerful blue eyes were killer. Even he was his own example. He had dropped out of college after FA. His father had left the world due to which he could not continue his studies further. And now he only managed the fields. Life was meant to be lived happily. Months and years were passing smoothly. But there was yet another joy to come. Islam's marriage. His mother had to bring her son's bride with her life. And Islam, why did Nayane run away from marriage today? There was no reason for his refusal or disbelief, nor was he a traveler on the paths of love and intercourse. He just wanted to stay away from the hassles of marriage. Or time and circumstances had something unique in mind for him. And he was ignorant of everything. It was a hot day in the month of July. As time passed, the warm golden plate of the sun had taken with it to the west. The heat of the whole day had turned into hubris. Every soul seemed to be still. The faint reddish-pink sun was sinking into the distant horizon. Someone was sneaking through a narrow street of the village with his head bowed. The weather was completely calm, yet the fragrant aroma scattered around was soul-inspiring. He was Aslam, dressed in white clothes. He looked as attractive as ever. She was put on by Khushbu Aslam. He left the house and was now going to his fields. His fields were located a short distance from the village. He had reached his fields after a 10 to 12-minute walk. Aslam had not only fields but also some buffaloes and some sheep, and a small mansion was also built. The heat of the whole day was boiling at the end of the day. Even more heat was felt in the fields. Aslam was wearing his usual daily work clothes and was now tending to his cattle. And then suddenly the light shadows of the evening spread for hundred. The dim to dark shadows were eager to swallow everything. Time went on like a blind sword in some ruthless hands. And then came the turning point where the last hour of Aslam's life was waiting for him. That accident was such a heart-wrenching tragedy that every special and ordinary person in the village was in tears of grief. It was a deeply troubling summer evening when Aslam met a man who was a master of black knowledge in his area. It is possible that Aslam used to meet this learned person and no one could ever know about it. But the surprising thing was that how was the friendship between Aslam and this person hidden? Or it was the fact that Aslam used to meet this person only in dark nights. That was the reason why no one else knew about Aslam's personal engagements. And how do you know? He used to spend the night in his farm mansion. Aslam's silence and solitude was known only to him. While people used to feel this habit and temperament of Islam, its simplicity and nobility. But this time the matter was reversed. For the first time, Aslam was looked upon with suspicion in the village. And Aslam also knew that some of his secrets had been revealed. But he was afraid of being disgraced by asking himself. And the villagers also didn't think it appropriate to ask him. Some of the elders of the village just kept looking at him with questioning eyes. The person who stared the most was Nazir. His fields were near the graveyard, which was far away from the village. Of course, Nazir, he had opened Islam's pool in the village. Aslam used to find this talk of people very unpleasant. He was drowning in the sea of thoughts, and then he came to know how finally my vessel was broken. He was convinced by the strong wines blowing in the previous nights that these wines carried the scent of my favorite perfume. It was indeed a very mesmerizing and strong fragrance, which no one else in the village used to wear. Only Aslam was fond of this fragrance. Aslam had come to know the reason why the villagers looked at him suspiciously. Ignoring everything, Aslam was busy with his routine, and finally the day dawned when someone from the village told the villagers about Aslam. He ran to the side. People found Aslam unconscious in the graveyard and brought him to his house. The mother's liver was weak. The condition of the crying mother was also invisible. as many words had spread throughout the village. Aslam regained consciousness, but the one who regained consciousness was not Aslam. But this is Islam. There was something else. The face was as if terrible and very weak. He used to tear his clothes with his own hands. He used to cut himself with his teeth and bleed. He did not allow any member of the village to come near him and often followed people. The terror of Aslam's horrible character had spread throughout the village. And then one day some young boys somehow overpowered Aslam and left him in his farm mansion. There were his cattle. Due to the fear and terror of Islam, the farmers in the surrounding areas rarely went to their crops. It all happened suddenly, and people suspected that Aslam used to go to the graveyard at night. He has been shadowed by some demon, but no one knew that Islam used to take graveyards at night. After going round and round, the matter finally reached Imam Masjid, and then Imam Saab revised the situation of Islam on his own, brought to the village. He went to Aslam's house and met his mother and discussed about Aslam. Along with Pir Sahib, Imam Masjid and some people of the village went to Aslam's fields. As soon as Aslam saw people coming towards him, he started shouting loudly and scratched himself. Aslam had indeed turned into a very weak and fearful state. Seeing this, people's hearts were saddened. A man like a flower had withered away. He was alive, but as dead. Pir Sahib started reading something as he approached Aslam, and then in a few moments Aslam became like a statue. Completely silent and still. An aerial creature had appeared in Aslam, but it was completely silent. Very content and calm. Who are you? Pir inquired. I am Mahakali. Aslam's heavy and thunderous voice echoed. Hearing which the rest of the people trembled. And Pir Sahib kept staring at Aslam with deep worried eyes. Why is this child possessed? Once again, Pir Sahib's voice was hoarse. He hurt me. He made me angry. Mahakali, who was present in Islam, spoke in a slightly hostile manner. What did this child do to you? Pir Sahib asked again and looked at Aslam carefully. He wanted to keep me in his prison. I failed him. Aslam replied with a heavy and sarcastic smile. This time everyone present was surprised by Aslam's answer. The real truth of Islam was proved today. That was the reason why today Islam was swinging in dead life. It was equal to live and die. This child has made a mistake. Forgive him and leave him. Pir Sahib said, Amen. I respect you because you are a scholar. Okay, I will go. But I have only one condition, and there will be no modification in my condition. Return from here after listening to the condition. Otherwise this boy will not be able to bear my anger and all of you will be responsible. Along with Aslam's voice, a woman's voice was also heard who was adamant about her decision. Tell me, what is the condition? Aslam took a deep long breath from his nostrils and started staring at everyone with his sunken terrible eyes. He was silent for a moment, and then it seemed. There is a Hindi talisman book in the Museum of Egypt. It has a mantra of my name. It will be read in front of me. Then I will leave without any harm. The subtle voice had now turned into laughter. And then all those people returned to the village with Pir Sahib. Everyone knew the gravity of the situation. Everyone knew that Mahakali would never let Aslam go now. She will continue to punish him under her shadow. Pir Sahib was a very mature person, but still he did not want to be an enemy of Aslam's life on the modification of condition. Now it was not even possible to go to Egypt and bring the required book from the museum there. In simple words, Mahakali meant that she will never forgive Islam's mistake as long as she lives. The living will remain in death. Pir Sahib had gone back to his place. The Imam of the mosque had also gone to his home consoling Aslam's mother. Now there was a painful cry of Aslam on one side and helpless advice from the village on the other. In the darkness of nights, Aslam's cries could be heard in the village. Sometimes he would laugh and sometimes he would cry. He was in great pain. He had gone mad. He was no longer conscious. The fields around the dirt road leading to his fields were also deserted due to his terror. People stopped going to their crops due to fear of Aslam. It happened once or twice that Aslam followed back. He used to do it and then it became difficult to get rid of it. It was not Islam, but the giants living in it were ready to kill people. This was the reason why the fields around Aslam's mansion were left deserted. Aslam had become so mad that he had forgotten even his mother's identity. Time passed and months turned into years, and then one day someone saw that only crows were flying at Aslam's mansion. This scene was also seen by other people of the village. No one had the courage to go closer and see. Crows stayed there continuously for 2 or 4 days, and then some stray dogs were also seen fighting there. The villagers were beginning to suspect that Aslam might be dead. The villagers sent some young boys to look there and soon found out that their suspicions were correct. Aslam was lying dead and his rotting body was scattered by animals and birds. At last, taking courage, Aslam's mutilated and smelly body was buried. People had started coming and going to their fields, but the ruined property of Aslam's mansion is still there. Time has turned the fields of Islam into jungles. Even today, in the dark of nights, the sound of crying and laughter can be heard in this ruined mansion of Aslam, and a terrible terror spreads through the village. Aslam's mother had also left the world after the death of her son. Even today that house of Aslam is lying empty, and there was no relative who could manage the house and land. Many people came to drive away the devil from Aslam's mansion and land, but those who came kept running away. Trick did Nayane Aslam tried to do that. He died like a living corpse in such a great punishment. And even after death he left his marks which no one could erase. What kind of knowledge was Nayane his teacher? He could not even handle Aslam, but he himself had hid somewhere. And no one even knew who Pir Baba was who killed Aslam. There were only speculations, but it was a fact that a young man was killed without death.